So, in today's discussion, I wanted to focus on the first of four different talks we're going to go through. Now, with this November Sadhana challenge, it centers around forming new habits. And last week, as a primer, we went into how difficult it is to get on board with forming new habits. First of all, having to hear someone tell me that I need to change the ways I do things, the way I think, no one wants to hear that. And that's not the point of this month either. It simply is to show how can I actually assess my own habits? How do I find that my habits are the reason for my sorrow or the reason for my despondency? Can I come to that point independently through thinking? That's the very point of this whole month. Not even to say that you all have to improve and you live like this, you have to change the way you are. That's not the direction I'm going in at all. Simply is holding up a mirror to ourselves and seeing, where am I falling short personally? Where do I think I can change something? Just a primer into trial and error at least. Now, how do we structure this? I'm sure in the Sadhana Challenge group, those of you that are in it, you saw the flyer that's in there. May have seemed kind of weird, the different things that were posted about the four different ways we're going to look at this. Today's session will focus on fix yourself before you flex yourself. I know, sounds kind of cheesy and cringe, but the point there being, before I go out and say this is my personality, this is what parts of it I'm proud of, does something have to be tinkered with first? And that comes to conduct. What am I like towards other people? That's usually the first line of defense, that I can be a little too aggressive. I may be too passive at times. And if you've ever found that the way you are doesn't really carry forward to other people, meaning you think a certain comment should be taken a certain way, but others feel offended by it, or they misunderstand you regularly, that's what the focus is on. That when it comes to our outer expression, how do we come across, and do we understand what kind of effect that has on ourselves? The second session on Wednesday will focus on time to life your style. A lifestyle is essentially life your style. Now, what does that mean? When it comes to the food we consume, the sacrifices we make, how we give in charity, these are all things we've discussed before. But in this context, it goes more in depth into, is my lifestyle conducive for what goals I want to reach? Because so often in our day-to-day, we have certain goals we want to achieve, and we're quite transfixed on them. But you look at the minutia. On a day-by-day basis, am I actually working to achieve those goals? It doesn't really seem so. And it could be that, no, I'm going to achieve these goals at some other point in my life, or right now I'm focusing on taking baby steps. When do those baby steps actually turn into bigger steps? Am I seeing the improvement I want to have? The second session focuses on that. Next Monday, the third session, reversing brain rot. That when it comes to my intellect, when it comes to what I consider knowledge to be, when it comes to what kind of karta, what kind of agent of action do I want to be as a doer? What am I thinking in that? Am I just taking the truth as whatever I see on social media or other people doing? Or do I actually believe in something when it comes to my own action? Because it's very easy to be basic. Very easy to fall for what other people do and say that's the direction I'm going to go in, right? Everything from the lifestyle level of a morning routine, right? I watch Ashton Hall's videos whenever they invade my TikTok and my Instagram, and it's always like him sticking his face in a bowl of ice water or something like that. So basic things like that, where do I have to have a certain routine to help reach my goals, all the way to the level of what is the point of my action, what am I trying to change in the world, and everything in between. That's where we look at that. Fourth and final session next Wednesday, prayer over performance. How big is prayer a part of our lives? If there is one habit I want us to inculcate, where I say this is something we must have in our lives, it's that power of prayer. And especially for the chick age group, that's something that seems to be sorely missing. Because when we're away from our families, or starting our own families now, when we find that level of independence, It's not like we have Balavihar every Sunday for us to have that prayer. It's not like we have our families mandating that we do that either. That's one of the first things to slip away. And that connection to Bhagavan, connection to a higher power, may not be there naturally for a multitude of reasons. But the catch here is to cultivate that prayerful attitude. It doesn't magically come. Prayer is the only way to cultivate that. So we'll go into that in the 4th session. So today, focusing on fixing myself before flexing myself. Let's look at it in different categories then. In the way we speak with others, what do we consider resolve to be like? What is my idea of happiness? How do I approach how I even act in the world? This is what we're going to look at today. And we don't have to go deep into any different kind of text to even look at this. My source for all of this is my handy dandy Bhagavad Gita. That's the first place to go to build these habits. Everything is given in here. And that's what we're doing in our regular Chick class anyway. So why not use it as a source? Now, when it comes to our outer expression, it's so easy to be misunderstood. Once a few years ago, I was at a bhiksha at a family's home, and Swami Sarveshananji was there with me. And we were chatting, and then there was a serious discussion going on, but something triggered something funny in my mind. I just kind of chuckled to myself. And people were kind of confused. Why am I smiling at that moment? But no one said anything. Then Swami Sarveshananji said, look, let me tell you a story. In Ramayana, after the war is won and everyone comes back to Ayodhya, there's the Pattabhisheka, the consecration of Bhagavan Sri Ramchandraji, where he assumes the role as king of Ayodhya. And all 4 brothers are there, seated. And during that ceremony, Lakshmana happens to laugh to himself. He chuckles, a little smile on his lips. Everyone there thought he was laughing for different reasons. Shatrughna, who is like Nakul and Sahadev in the Mahabharata, he's like the irrelevant brother. Like the last guy drafted in the NFL is Mr. Irrelevant. That's what he was, Mr. Irrelevant. We don't really hear much about him. He was great. He had a great character, guys, but we don't hear much about him. So he thought Lakshmana was laughing, looking at him, saying, look how insignificant you are. I helped fight in the war. Bharata took care of the kingdom while Ramji was gone. Ramji is the king, and you're here along for the ride, fourth wheeling. And he thought he was laughing at him. Bharata looked over at Lakshmana. Bharata thought Lakshmana was laughing at him, thinking that during this entire time, while Lakshmana was in the forest with Ramji, protecting him and Sita Devi, this entire time, Bharata is just sitting there in Ayodhya and not even serving as the king. Bhagavan Ramji's padukas are there on the throne and he's just chilling. He thought Lakshmana's laughing at me for how easy this whole time was for me. Ramji looks at Lakshmana. Even he thinks Lakshmana is laughing at me. Why? Because here we are living in the forest and we had to go through all of that, fighting Ravana, saving Sita Devi, everything. Lakshmana is now laughing at me, looking at me being king, seeing how comfortable I'm going to be at this point. So to take any kind of misunderstanding out of the way, and this is true, Bhagavan Ramchandraji brandishes his sword, puts it at Lakshmana's neck right away, and says, tell me why you're laughing at me. Lakshmana tells him it's nothing serious. The truth is, during those 14 years of exile, Lakshmana did not sleep a wink. This is true. He was constantly on lookout from wild animals, predators, people in the forest, anyone that could attack Bhagavan Ramji and Sita Devi. He was awake for 14 straight years. And he said now that he's back, at this moment right here, where it's the consecration of Ramji taking over Ayodhya, at this moment he starts to feel drowsy. So he was chuckling to himself thinking, no matter how powerful a person can be, Nidra Devi is that one thing that can never be conquered. Think about it. No matter how strong an individual is, strongest man in the world even, sleep is the one thing that'll put you on your back. That affects everybody. That's why he was chuckling to himself. Swamiji telling me that story was, especially when all eyes are on you in a public setting, even a small chuckle like that, so many things. The ways we carry ourselves in the outer world affect us so much that way. It's easy to say, oh, that's external, doesn't really matter, it's all my... True, but for day-to-day interactions, this does matter a lot. Where the most subtle things have the biggest ramifications. So when it comes to speech now, what do we look for when it comes to speech? This comes to us in the 14th shloka of the 17th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. There we find just one shloka on speech specifically, but it's often quoted and gives us an amazing look into the power of speech as well as how it can go wrong. What does it say right here? That kind of speech that is good is that which is satyam, priyam, hitam. Satyam, priyam, hitam. Satyam is that speech which is true, truthful. Priyam is pleasant to listen to. Nothing that is harsh and grating. Hitam is beneficial. It can actually serve some purpose to help someone. It's needed to be said. Now think about our daily lives. How much of the speech, not the speech that we hear, the speech that we actually say, how much of it is this combination of truthful, pleasant, and beneficial? I'd venture to say very little. Not that we're liars going around lying all the time, but speech is used often just to fill a silence. Nothing more than that. We're scared of silence. We think that's the most awkward position to be in. Just being in silence without looking at a device, alone, or with someone else. We're afraid of that silence. We have to fill it somehow. When we fill it, however, what's the nature of what we're filling it with? Think about the 3 people you talk to most on a daily basis. Probably the people that you live with, either your families or your roommate if you're at college. And it can even, I'm extending this even to text messaging as well, right? We seem to express ourselves more through messages than we do actually speaking to someone else. How much of it is beneficial? How much of it is pleasant? Because given the political climate we live in today, given the problems in the world that we're facing, given the stresses that we have, expression is the only way to let some of these things out, and it's always going to be with that tenor of life sucks. Venting out to someone, for instance. On another layer, it can be other venom that's taken out on people. We are able to take out our anger and emotions on very few people in our lives. People that are our bosses or superiors at work or at school, you can't get away with that. It usually falls on our family members. That's where it's taken out. To the point where, think about it, you're in public and you bump into someone, you apologize so profusely. You do that to your own brother or sister, you don't really apologize. You're like, get the hell out of my way, is how we react, right? So we have that leeway with the people that are closest to us. That's usually where the venom of speech comes out. So what is the nature of my speech? What do I want it to be? You notice people that lose their temper frequently and often? Whenever they scream and go nuts, the more they do that, the less people take them seriously. That person got mad. Oh, okay, they blew their top. Yeah, whatever. The person that never loses their temper, whose speech is always restrained, in control, when that person has a blow up and crashes out in some way, that's like international news right there. It means something. So I'm not saying never have harsh speech. There is a need for harsh speech at times. As a brahmachari, trust me, I'm coming to terms with that often. There is a time and place where your voice has to be raised, your language has to be a bit more colorful than usual, and you have to be pointed for people to get your point. How often do I use that? How much do I exhaust that, though? This is a hallmark of leadership. Like with football season and basketball season, and now baseball season just ended. All these sports are in full swing at the moment. You look at leaders of various teams and how they behave. Right? There are those that are always screaming at their players or their teammates. They stop listening after a while. Those that actually raise their voice when it's needed, you see the impact right away. How quick that is. Now, how beneficial is my speech to other people? Not just pleasant, but beneficial. What am I doing with my words to help someone else around me? Do I give advice like freely? Do I wait for someone to come to me for advice? What do I want to do with my speech in that? Because when we feel like we know something that can actually help someone, oftentimes those are the times no one wants to listen to us. And there's no point in giving advice at that time either. Your friend's going through a terrible breakup, for instance, and they come to you. At that moment, you want to say, hey, actually speaking, that girl or guy really wasn't great for you, in my opinion. That's probably not the time to say that when the person's grieving over the end of that relationship. That can come later on. It's truthful, but may not be pleasant or beneficial at that time. So what's even harder is trying to find that sweet spot where my speech is truthful, beneficial, and pleasant all at the same time. That seldom comes. And as a friend, do I want to be a yes man for my friends? Where I go with every single opinion that they have and say, yeah, you're right. That's not a friendship. That's me being an enabler at that point. What do I do with my speech to actually have an impact with it? That is one of the first habits to cultivate. Now, how do we do that? And this will all be given to you after this. One exercise is to actually look at my speech patterns. How often do I speak to certain people? And what can I categorize this speech as? Is it that it was something mundane, something vulgar, something just had to vent out? Or is it about something that's higher? Like I get on the high school kids all the time about their vocabulary. I say, you guys are studying for the SATs, for college and everything, and you know all these big words. Yet, when you guys talk to me or talk to each other, every sentence starts with low key, every sentence ends with dead ass. Like, how is it that you're growing any way through your speech when that's the only words you use? Like, do you know how ridiculous you sound right now? How not seriously I want to take you because of the way you sound? It's true. So many of the phrases we use or how we speak, it's in the workforce, it's either corporate jargon that doesn't mean anything, optimize, synergize, things like that, or it's like talking like high schoolers where everything starts with low key and ends with dead ass. Like it does not serve any kind of purpose, just makes us look ridiculous. So what are my speech patterns? What is it that I'm actually accomplishing through my speech then? And I showed the high schoolers recently these videos that I showed you guys a couple years ago when these international students would come from all over the world to America on a foreign exchange thing for high schoolers. This was in like the 50s. And they'd have people from Bangladesh, India, Pakistan, Italy, Turkey, Tunisia, all these places. And remember in those videos how well they spoke? How articulate they were in forming their ideas? Not even on mundane topics, but like geopolitical issues or religious values, things like this. We're not at that place at all. And I'm talking about us who are in our 20s and 30s here. We are not at that place at all. Our speech has fallen off so much. Social media has a lot to do with that. The effect of having to get things out in 140 characters and not more than that has an effect on it. A lot of different factors right here. But the first habit is, what is the power of my speech that I have? Now, after looking at speech, the second department that we look at today, fix yourself before I flex myself, comes also in the 18th chapter of Gita. This has to do with dhritihi, my fortitude. Fortitude meaning how steadfast am I? How much do I stick to something? Now here this is given in those layers of the three gunas. Tamas, Rajas, and Sattva. And when we met last week, we clearly went through how, when it comes to forming new habits, It's not about reinventing the wheel anyway. It's simply going from tamas to rajas to sattva. That is the best way to form new habits, using that as a framework. What is tamasic dhriti? Meaning tamasic fortitude. That's called that stupidity where even if I know something is bad for me, I want to stick to it. Either to spite someone else or to make some kind of point. There are those people that during the pandemic were convinced that the vaccine was just something the government was trying to impose on us. There's no point in it. It's terrible. We're still going to meet with people. I mean, we had people in our congregation that were like that. And they wanted to argue with me where they were like, hey, you're mandating people have to be vaccinated to come back to Balvihar. We don't agree with that. We want to talk to you about it. And I'm like, if you want to talk to me about it, please, let's do it online. I don't want you coming to my house if you're not vaccinated. Like, that's my personal safety matters that way. A lot of people died that way. They literally died on that hill where they say, I'm not going to get vaccinated. They were so proud of that. And when that second or third or fourth wave hit in 2021, they actually passed away. Who's the joke on here? That is that tamasic dhriti. Sticking with our opinions no matter what, even being given new knowledge, we say no because I think this is true. This has to be it. Thinking that my opinions are facts is the tamasic dhriti, tamasic fortitude, where I can't take guidance at all from anyone or anything. My arrogance keeps me from doing that. What is rajasic fortitude? Rajasic fortitude is where I'm willing to go through hardships. I'm willing to put up with inconvenience, all because I will get some benefit from it. So whether it's duty, whether it's pleasure, whether it's wealth, I will have fortitude, but to gain these things. Not for any other purpose, but that personal gain that I get from it. Now that's better than tamasic dhriti. Because even in this rajasic way, at least there is some growth that will happen, even if my end goal is to get some kind of benefit. That's still okay. What is sattvic dhriti? Sattvic fortitude is that type which restrains the mind, focuses it, and makes the mind, pranas, senses, all of this function as optimally as possible. That unwavering way where the habits I form, I will not compromise at any level because I know what's good for me and that's what I'm going to follow. I've taken that guidance from something higher. This bleeds into lifestyle as well. What we consume, how we spend our time, all of this. What is that fortitude to stick to it? Not because I think this is true, therefore I'm doing it, but because I find its authority in scripture. I find its authority in what my guru says. I find its authority in being with people that follow this course of action, and I see how it's affected them positively. Therefore, I take it up as well. Now, fortitude is something that we could never say, okay, I have enough fortitude now, let me let go of it. That's the sure sign that I don't have that fortitude. When is it going to be tested? I have to know that for sure. That comes in different milestones in life. First milestone I'd say is the first time we find ourselves alone without our families around us. Do you know how many college freshmen, good students that go off to college, their first semester, they have like below a 2.5 GPA? Because it's the first time that their parents aren't on their butts making them study, the first time that they don't have a curfew or a bedtime or something like that. And once they get to college, they go nuts. Maybe even you've experienced that, your first semester, something difficult that way. The first time we're alone like that, that happens. Before we gather ourselves and say, okay, there's a reason why all these limitations were in place. Let me deal with my newfound independence responsibly. The first time is when we're alone, whether that's college or your first job, the first time you move away, whenever that is. Another milestone that comes up, when you now have the ability to dictate what your surroundings are like. Who are your closest friends? How do you spend your time? some disposable income that you have after paying taxes, after paying rent, food and groceries, healthcare, all of this, the few pennies that we have left after that. When you decide what you want to do with that, some more independence, then that fortitude comes in again. That I can blow all my money on taking like 3 trips a year with my friends, or I can invest on having a down payment for a house, which is not as glamorous, but in the long term actually helps me. That's fortitude right there. Frugalness is one way of fortitude. The next milestone after that, when it comes to those loved ones that I have, a life partner or the people closest to me in that inner circle, what am I doing to ensure that person's happiness, even if I have to go through some hardship? And the benefit is not going to be, they're not going to thank me one day and say, oh, thank you for looking out for me. That's not the point then. It's, I genuinely love this other person. What fortitude do I have to put my feelings on hold, my hopes and dreams on hold, in order to grow with this other person? So like that, these milestones come up. So hopefully I've covered the gambit for all of us as chicks, right? Whichever area we find ourselves in, either it's early on in college where that newfound independence is there, perhaps later on where there's disposable income and making decisions that way. Furthermore, more than making financial decisions, decisions that bring me closer to another person. What is my level of fortitude in all of this? What are those habits I can cultivate to make this as seamless as possible? That even when I stick something to something so fervently, how am I able to express that? Does it come across in a way that because it's my opinion, therefore I'm sticking to it? Or is there some other authority I'm going by? Is it logical, the reasoning I'm finding for this? So fortitude, we see it that way. Next is action, karma. This is also something that has to do with the outer world. So this comes to us in the 23 through 25th shlokas of the 18th chapter of Gita. What's given right there? Tamasic action is action that is undertaken from delusion without any regard for the consequence. Injury to me or others, loss for me or to others, that's considered to be tamasic. Where I do not care about that at all. For me, the immediate pleasure that I get from this action is all that I go for. That's it. Now, when this becomes a habit, that personality layer where I don't give a damn about anyone else around me, but I'm always looking out for myself, that is a poison pill that I take. Where I may be happy, only in the short run, however. Over time, people leave me left and right. Whether it's friendships, whether it's my own family members, they can abandon me. Because they see that I do not care about anyone beyond myself. Selfishness in action completely. What is Rajasic action? That action done with egoism, saying I am doing this, I am getting the benefit, no matter how much effort I put in, longing with some desire or gain, wanting to get something out of this. Now, early on in our lives, we're conditioned to act in this way. And that's fine. Anyone who wants to gain anything in life and make something for themselves and achieve certain goals, they have to have a Rajasic attitude when it comes to action. Simply saying that, I don't want to dream big, I know I can't achieve big things, that's nonsense. Anyone that's dreamt big has always said, I have to go for this, as unlikely as this goal may seem. Sattvic action, that which is free from attachment. Not looking for any sort of gain from this, done without loving or hating what I'm doing, and that which is ordained by something higher. Not simply because I want to do it, because this I want is very flimsy. My desires can change so much. What is that constant that I'm going after? Are my goals given to me by Shastra? Meaning, are my goals centered around exhausting my vasanas and not building new ones? Is that on my mind when I act? So habits to form here, it goes more into thinking at every stage. Why am I doing what I want to do? You notice in the years, say ages of 16 to 26, about 10 years right there. Those of you that have gone through that whole stage, about how many times have you changed your career path or college major or anything in that time span? A show of fingers, no, you're awake at least. It can be 0 if it is, but in that 10 years, how many times have you changed your career path or major or anything? Yeah. See, everyone has at least more than one finger up in the air. Some people have none because they're just so driven and focused. But we all have different changes that we've had. If you notice, revisiting our own goals from time to time, why am I acting? That's what let us know we have to make some kind of a change. Because do you know how many people there are that they say early on, I want to stick with a certain career path, therefore I've gone in with it, and I never changed it or revisited or thought about it. They're miserable once they get to that point where they're actually in that career. They may have thought 5-10 years ago, this is what I want to do, never rethought it, never went back to the drawing board. They just went with that flow, and they find they're actually not happy. It's okay to change my mind on these things. But when it comes to my action, revisiting and seeing, what is that second why, that third why of what I want to do something for? I want to take up a certain career. Why? Because it pays well. Okay, what's the second why beyond that? If the only reason is it pays well, I'm crap out of luck at that point, because there will be sleepless nights, there will be hardships, and that only carrot I have is money. That's not going to last. Sorry to say. There has to be some deeper reasoning of why I do something. And only someone who is a sattvic karta can understand that, where I'm not attached to the fruits and therefore I'm going for this. I'm going for it because it's a passion. It's something that will support me. Something I find helps me grow, and these are the effects it helps me grow in. Am I able to do that with my action? Karma is taken in this way as well. And the final one that we look at for today, perhaps the most important one, is sukha, happiness. Happiness is also analyzed in the 18th chapter into these 3 different gunas. In what ways? Tamasic sukha. Happiness can be tamasic as well. That kind of pleasure that arises from sleep, not listening to anyone, heedlessness, and indolence. Vegging out completely, laziness. That can make one happy. One of my favorite movies, a cult classic. It's called Office Space. It was a flop when it released, but became a super hit later on. These guys work at a tech company and they hate their lives. They're totally miserable. And so he's talking to his neighbor, who's a construction worker, and he says, "What would you do if you had $1 million?" is what he asks him. And the guy says, I'd spend it on drugs and alcohol and all these things. He's very honest, the construction worker. Then he asks the tech guy, what would you do if you had $1 million? And he says, I'd do nothing. Like, I would do nothing. I wouldn't go into work, I'd do nothing. Well, the other guy, construction worker, says, hell, man, you don't have to have $1 million to do nothing. My cousin's broke. He don't do crap, is what he says. So it's not even that I have to have resources or means or privilege to fall into tamasic happiness. My tamasic happiness can be the way I want to do it. I can live in squalor without any growth, without anything, and just be complacent. If that makes me happy, it makes me happy, but where's the growth? What am I yearning for? What do I get up out of bed for? And if there's nothing to get up out of bed for, I don't get out of bed. That's the product of it. What is rajasic happiness? These 2 are my favorite definitions. I quote them maybe once a month in some classes that I take. Rajasic happiness is that sukham which is like nectar at first and like poison later on. Sattvic sukham is like poison at first and like nectar later on. As if Bhagavad Gita is not hard enough to understand, we have riddles here as well, Bhagavan Krishna. What is this? Rajasic happiness. Like nectar at first and like poison later. Classic example, I'm so glad I live in a day and age with Uber Eats. It's a godsend. I just have to push buttons on my phone and the food just gets delivered to me. And if I feel scared at night where I don't want to open the door, I can wait for the guy to leave, looking through my window like a creep, and then I can just open the door, grab it, and then eat it. On demand. But if I find myself doing this 7 times a week with cheesecakes and burritos and all of this, then you end up looking like I do now. Not that I got it that way, I got it from pictures, but you end up looking like I do now. Health takes a hit at that point. What started out like nectar became like poison. Satvik Sukha. I don't know how many of you guys did the sadhana of the sleep early, but wake up early was a part of it as well. Waking up early, especially, we had our first overnight where it went to 30 degrees. Waking up early in the wintertime sucks. There's no other way to put it. Your bed is the nice warm place to be. It's not even light out with the sun rising or anything. It feels terrible, man. It's awful. The sukham here, it is like poison at first, having to wake up to that. But I find myself making it a habit. I find that I do it consistently. I have more time for different things. I don't feel so rushed in the morning. I have more energy as well. Time to work out and get rid of the Uber Eats effect that I've had on myself. All of this is there. It turns into a nectar. Where once that habit's formed, even on vacation, I'm like, man, I want to get out of bed early. Happiness can be seen in this way as well. So when it comes to fixing myself before flexing myself, the rule of thumb here is, how objectively can I actually look at myself? In terms of speech, which guna layer am I attached to right now? In terms of the goals that I have, what kind of action am I doing? Which layer am I in? When it comes to my fortitude and resolve, sticking with what I said I'm going to do. If it's something negative in the first place, even terrorists have great resolve and fortitude. They have great fortitude. It's tamasic completely because it's for something that's destructive. What level is my fortitude at? Am I sticking with something just to be obstinate? I had a friend when I was in college. One of her other acquaintances said that, I bet you would fail if you took the LSATs. So she studied and wanted to take it. I said, do you plan on going to law school? She said, no, I just want to prove them wrong. If my time and effort goes in just to prove the next guy wrong, how pathetic is my life if I do that? What am I doing for myself? So fortitude is, am I sticking to something for my own growth or simply as a flex? What is it actually for? Now, there's some types of fortitude that are admirable. In the first batch of the Vedanta course, the one that was held from 1965 to 1968. It was the only course taught by Pujya Gurudev himself. There was one lady that came to him and said, I want to study at the course. She was an accomplished lawyer. I'm talking about in the 60s. She was a lawyer in Bharat that had fought between the Supreme Court and had argued her cases there. She said, I want to leave everything and I want to join your ashram. I want to become a Swamini. I want to renounce. And Gurudev, half jokingly, half serious, said, look, this is not for you. And apparently she had really beautiful hair. He said, you're just going to be worried about your hair the whole time. Because Vedanta and everything's not really for you. And she said, look, watch me. I'm going to join your course. I'm going to be successful. And I won't even touch my hair once, is what she said. And she stuck to that. And she went on to become Swamini Sharda Priyananji, a legend in Chinmaya Mission, who had started so many different ashrams and schools. The work that she did was just amazing. She attained Mahasamadhi in 2001, quite a while ago. But in the years that she served, she did amazing. And she was notable in that she never had her hair tied. She kept with that fortitude and said, yeah, I'm never going to touch my hair. So sometimes there are moments where to inspire us, people bring out that fortitude in us. And in one way we can say, oh, that's so minor, not touching your hair and this and that. It's deeper than that, though. There's a level of commitment that was shown. So just to spite someone, it's not tamasic in that regard, but sticking to something when the guru says, okay, prove yourself to me, that's a different type of fortitude that's there. And anyone that's ever dared to do anything big, that daring spirit comes from that dhriti. Fortitude, we've looked at this way. And then, of course, happiness as well. What is it that makes me happy? Do I want to work for my happiness, or do I want it just to come to me naturally without me actually doing anything? Living in the capitalist system we live in today, with so much emphasis on passive income, so much emphasis on making a nest egg for yourself, and all of this, we want to get happiness with the least amount of effort possible. That seems to be a goal of life. I can't tell me how many chicks I talk to that say, look, my plan is work as hard as I can, retire by the time I'm 40, no more work after that, just enjoy life. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Not criticizing that. But when it comes to your own growth and happiness, do we understand how much work that actually takes? What am I actually looking for to make myself happy, first of all? First thing to consider. Second is, what am I willing to do to get that happiness? If that means being a workaholic, severing ties with family, friends, and just living in that realm of work, if that's that important to me, the happiness I get from that, dismissing the people around me, so be it. A habit to form here is balance, then. Do I find happiness coming from all areas of my life? That a personal life matters just as much as a professional one. Because what happens when I meet y'all's parents? Your parents corner me at Mahasamadhi camps and places, and they say, Hariji, my kid listens to you, so I want you to tell them something. And I'm like, your kid doesn't really listen to me. It's not what I've experienced. But go ahead. And they say, look, they're in their mid-20s. We want them to find a life partner. They say they're too busy with work. You tell them, find a life partner. Like, that's not really how it works. I'm not a mercenary that can just tell your kid to do something and they'll do it. But look, when I strike up that conversation with you guys, I ask and say, okay, you thought about this stage of life? And when your answer is, no, look, work is what I'm focused on right now, I don't have time for this. I get that, but when is there a time where work actually slows down and you do have time for this? To actually think about your future with a life partner? Because on the work side, it's not going to slow down. This idea of balance, how does that come about? You have to sit and actually ask yourself, okay, maybe cutting down on certain goals to accommodate other goals, or making it clear to the people around me that this is my focus, get off my back. What is it that you have to do? How do you want to express this? How do you want to cultivate that habit to have that balance in various areas? So with that concludes for today this message. And I know I touched upon a lot of different areas, but all centered around that central focus of fix myself before I flex myself. Then when it comes to flexing, all of you have great achievements and so much to be proud of. I'm saying that because I'm proud of you for all the things you have. But there are those underlying things no one else sees. You noticed when we looked at any of these different departments of life, no one else can see on the outside whether we're tamasic, rajasic, or sattvic when it comes to what kind of happiness we want. No one else can tell that. Only we can. But orienting ourselves that way, that does make a big difference in ease of life and how we are, and spiritually, most importantly. So with the message sinking in today, I'm going to post this on YouTube. Tomorrow, I'll post what the sadhana is. Some activity or something you can do.